Hi guys, welcome to Set Course with Tanya. Today we'll be discussing a portion of general navigation, that is mass and balance, and the part 1 of which is concept of CG. So let's get started. Center of gravity. It is the point at which the total weight of the aircraft is said to act through. Now, what is weight? It is the force on total mass experienced due to gravity. Now, as you can see in this picture, the total weight is supposed to act through this point. It is referred to as the center of gravity. Now, it is the point of balance affecting the stability on ground and in air. So we'll see later that the CG moves from fore to aft position, which affects the balance. It is that part of the aircraft that follows the flight path. Now what is the flight path? It is the trajectory of aircraft motion. It is that point about which the aircraft maneuvers in the air. And it is the point through which the three axes of the aircraft pass through. If you can look at this picture, the three axes, the longitudinal axis, the normal axis and the lateral axis, they meet at the common point which is referred to as the center of gravity. Datum. It is the point along the longitudinal axis of the aeroplane, the longitudinal axis over here, designated by the manufacturer as zero reference point from which all the balance arm calculations begin. Now, if you can see in this picture, the datum being the leading edge of the wing. For the training aircraft, so as Cessna 172, the datum is generally the front face of firewall. Now, all the calculations or all the arms which are ahead of the datum, these are referred to as the negative arm. And all those arms behind the datum are referred to as the positive arm. Now the balance arm, the distance from the aircraft datum to the CG or centroid of a body. Moving ahead, concept of torque. So as you can see that the downward force acts on the center of gravity, which is referred to as the weight. And a center of lift is there, which is also referred to as the aerodynamic center, along which the lift force acts through. Now the downward force around this CG creates up a torque, which is referred to as the force cross displacement in the downward direction as designated by the pink arrow. This creates a torque which is making the aircraft to nose down, or we can say that pitch down. Now to balance that, the elevator, it creates a force in the opposite direction. So in this way, it acts as an upside down wing that generates lift downward. So that, as you can see over this picture, the black arrow through which the opposite torque is created, and it balances the initial torque that was created by the center of gravity. In this way, the lift depends upon the CG location and the aircraft weight. The torque again given by the formula force cross displacement. Now, center of gravity limits. The CG is not a fixed point. As you can see within this video, it is moving from a forward position to an aft position. It has a range of movement. And it must always be within the limit during a flight so as to avoid any flutter. And the CG, which is given by the manufacturer or set by the aircraft manufacturer, it is provided in the flight manual of the aircraft. Now moving forward, CG if at its forward limit. The more forward the CG, if the CG is forward, hence the torque created would be more, making the aircraft pitch down or nose down. And in order to counter that, we would require a large force by the elevator, and hence we would need to pull back the control column. This makes the aircraft more stable. And if the aircraft is more stable, it is less maneuverable. As stability, that is due to the fixed parts, is inversely proportional to the maneuverability, that is due to the movable parts. Now the increase in the force from the horizontal stabilizer. If the force is increased on the horizontal stabilizer, our lift requirement will increase in order to keep the aircraft in equilibrium. Now since lift is increased, we know that drag will also be increased, as induced drag is a lift dependent drag. If drag is increased, then there will be a higher fuel consumption. Now if we revive the lift equation, it says L is equals to half rho v square CLS. Now to maintain an equilibrium, what we are doing is we are increasing the angle of attack by pulling the control column. Now since the angle of attack is increased, which is say CL is increased, this way our lift requirement will be met. Now suppose an aircraft is flying straight and level. It has its stall speed say 40 knots. Critical angle say its critical angle is 16 degree. Now in this case, when we are increasing the angle of attack, what we are doing is we are bringing that angle closer to the critical angle of attack, and hence what the stall speed earlier would be 40 knots now can be achieved at 50 knots only, because we have increased the angle of attack. So when we are doing this, our stall speed increases as we have brought the angle of attack towards the critical angle of attack. Now if I summarize this, CG at a forward limit, it has got a nose down tendency. The stability has increased and the maneuverability has decreased. The stick force requirement has increased and therefore we pull the control column more. There is a more tail down force, as we discussed, to counter the torque initially created by the forward movement of CG, and hence more lift requirement. And how we do that? By increasing the angle of attack. And since lift is increases, the induced drag automatically increases. Our stall, rotation and decision speed increases. Our fuel consumption increases because we have increased the drag. And thereby our range and endurance and rate of climb decreases. If we reverse the case, if we take CG at aft limit, if this is the new CG, then our scenario would be completely different. Our initial torque has now decreased and the amount of stick force requirement, it now decreases, and thereby we push the control column. So you can try all these cases by your own self. If you face any difficulty, just let me know in the comment section. Blast. The process of adding or removing mass on the aircraft purely for the purpose of positioning or correcting CG. Since we know that CG should always be within the limits, hence the purpose of repositioning or adding or removing mass, it is known as blast. Now CG moment. The effect or the force resulting from the weight of an aircraft and the position of its center of gravity, which is used to calculate the weight and balance of the aircraft. Moment being given by the formula mass cross arm, that is the balance arm. And the position of the CG of the aircraft as a whole is calculated as the total moment divided by the total weight. Now if we take example of a normal load and trim, where we have some items and given some arm lengths, we'll be able to calculate the CG. Now, if we take example of a normal load and trim sheet where we have certain items on board with certain weight and arm length, we'll be able to calculate the moment and then the position of CG as a whole. Now, suppose we have on board a pilot and a co-pilot that weigh around 80 kilograms and the arm length is say 2 inches aft datum. Now, what is aft datum? As we discussed earlier, now for the calculation purposes, we'll take this value as a positive value. The moment comes around by cross multiplying them, the moment comes around 320 kilogram inches aft of datum. If we have passengers on board that weigh 70 and say the arm is 3.5 inches again aft of datum, we have our moment as 490. If suppose we have a baggage of 60 kgs with arm of 4 inches, our moment is 240. And if we have fuel, say 100 kgs with the arm of 1.5, we have our moment as 150. So from the formula that CG position is total moment, which is the sum of this column divided by total weight, which is the sum of this column, we have our CG 2.60 inches aft datum. Suppose if the manufacturer has provided a CG envelope from 2.4 inches to 3 inches aft datum. Hence, in this case, our CG lies within the limit and our aircraft is mass balanced. This was all for the part 1. I'll soon come up with part 2 of mass and balance and will post questions regarding the part 1 on my Instagram channel, Set Course with Tanya. Do subscribe for getting latest updates.